I'm the bearer of bad news. It's time for the speeches.
Oh, no.
Now, looking at us, I know it's hard to believe, but I'm actually the eldest son. That's true. It's down to me to make the first speech. A slight change from 10 years ago, for those of you who were here then, and is sober enough to remember. Yes. This table. There'll only be 3 speeches this time. Mum's been talking non-stop for the last 50 years, and she's decided it's time for a rest. But before we have the speeches, Mum and Dad, I'm going to cut the cake. So I invite you to do that now.
Okay.
If you wish to take any photos, you may do so. Yeah, so I'll take them.
We're just pretending.
Oh, that's worth 50 quid.
Untie the ribbon.
Patience,
Are you finished? All right, Christopher.
All right, you've got your shot of the year, have you?
Okay, then, that's fine.
There we are.
I must thank my friend Joe for making the cake.
Cut it. Is there a knife?
That's good. Should be cut efficiently.
Now, after my speech last time at the Ruby wedding, I had a lot of feedback. Despite that, I'm going to make another one. Casting your mind back, you may remember I made some references to Mum's driving. Well, I have to say it's all okay now. At great expense, after much negotiation, she has her own lane now between Danbury and Chelmsford. In addition, a committee met at the local council recently to discuss the speed of Mum's driving. Apparently there have been complaints about people not getting their milk in the morning due to Mum holding up the milk float. In a last-ditch attempt to get the accelerator pedal further down, they decided the only option was to make her have a hip replacement. Either that or a foot extension. So I say hip hip replacement. Doing my research for this
Where did
speech.
you get this material?
It's all my own work.
His own work.
I decided to look back over the last 50 years to get an idea of how the world has changed in that time. We've had 8 prime ministers, the assassinations of John F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King and John Lennon, the Vietnam War, the Falklands War, the Gulf War, the war in the Balkans, the Chernobyl disaster, the space shuttle disaster, the Bhopal disaster in India, the Iranian embassy siege, the Mexico City earthquake, the Los Angeles earthquake, 50 years of marriage. We've had SARS and mad cow disease. Dad survives them all. Then last week he has a flu jab and half his hair falls out. In fact, in all that time, Mum seems to have gained a lot of hair. Yes. I have a suspicion that she's been plucking and rerouting follicles during the night under the cover of darkness. Speaking of the cover of darkness, I'm aware that as couples get older, they sometimes take steps to avoid disturbing one another during the night. When nature calls, that sort of thing. At first, it's sleeping in separate beds. Then when things get a little more troublesome, it's sleeping in separate rooms. Not content with this, though, Mum and Dad have decided to have separate houses. That final kiss goodnight is followed by Dad's 20-minute walk up the road. Back to his basket. the lengths Dad will go to stop having his hair stolen. It hasn't worked completely though, as Mum lies there trying to nod off. From half a mile away, she can still faintly hear Dad snoring, drifting through the night. If I could be serious for a moment though, I recall some fond memories from my younger days. Mum and Dad have always been there for me and Johnny through good times and bad. Dad, I remember when I got my full set of A-level results. Dad came to see me in the shed where I'd been sent and said, "Don't worry, son, everything will be all right." Over the next few days, we sorted out my further education and everything indeed was all right. Mum has always ensured that Johnny and I looked our best, while at the same time not wanting to waste money. I remember on my first day at school, I turned up in blazer and trousers, several sizes too big for me. "You'll grow into them," said Mum. I recall clearly scanning the playground that day for a friendly face, only to make eye contact with Carter, the school bully. With my oversized clothing, I was a prime target. Over he came with his shirt hanging out and his tie wrapped round his forehead. "I want £5 for this dead hedgehog," he said. Well, it was a very nice hedgehog, but I said, "I haven't got £5. Bring it back tomorrow," he said. So I went home that night and I told Dad what had happened. "No," he said, "tell him to stick his hedgehog where the sun don't shine." One further bit of advice he gave me: "The bigger they are, the harder they fall," he said. Well, thanks for that, Dad. And actually, I find the bigger they are, the harder they hit you. So I went back to school the next day and I told Carter what Dad had told me to say. And so it was, thanks to Dad, that Carter found himself in hospital later that day, watching doctors extract a dead hedgehog from my backside. And as for those blazers, I still have some in my wardrobe where I can't see my hand. Talking of bullies, and this bit is true, I was bullied when I used to get off the bus on the way home from school. There was an older lad who used to take the mickey out of me, and it sounds funny now, but it wasn't at the time. He used to make me sit in the ditch until he'd gone. Anyway, after a few weeks of this, he stopped doing it. I never knew why, but years later I bumped into this lad and he told me that Dad had come home from work early one day and caught him walking home from school and told him to leave me alone. Never knew I knew that, did you, Dad?
No.
And it's true, so thanks for that. I remember years ago, Dad had his credit card stolen. He didn't report it to the police because the thief was spending less than Mum was. And here's a thought. If a man speaks in the forest and there's no woman around to hear him, is he still wrong? Mum and Dad, not only have you been fantastic parents to Johnny and I, but you've also been fantastic grandparents to Alex and Zara. I think the girls have something to give you now as a thank you for all the love that you've shown them over the years.
Yeah. Oh, they're lovely, thank you.
Finally, I don't need to say that 50 years of marriage is a remarkable accomplishment, and any long-lasting marriage is always the result of a lot of commitment, patience, tolerance and love. All of us here are here to offer our congratulations to you on this special day. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the bride and groom 50 years on. Please be upstanding and raise a toast to Angela and Derek. Cheers. Thank you very much.